create the empire you build when you stop running in circles. Welcome to Soft Girl Era, the sacred space where strong Black women unlearn survival, rediscover softness, and reclaim the joy, rest, and freedom they deserve. I'm your host, LeAnne Dolce, pronounced Dolce, like sweet softness whispered in French. And I'm your guide from burnout to boundaries, from doing to being, from strong to soft, and loving every second of it. Today, I had the extraordinary opportunity to sit down with Justus Harris, and let me tell you, this conversation didn't just inspire me, it shook me. Justus Harris isn't just building wealth, they're dismantling the cycles that keep us small, stuck, and spinning our wheels in survival mode. They're proving that growth isn't reserved for people who had a head start or a trust fund. It's available to anyone bold enough to break the pattern, pivot with purpose, and build something that lasts. And their impact? They're not just creating empires, they're creating pathways. They're showing Black professionals, leaders, and entrepreneurs that we don't have to keep running the same race, hitting the same walls, carrying the same weight. We can build something different, something transformational, something that endures. And sis, if you've been running that same race, hitting those same walls, carrying that same weight, this message is for you. Because here's the truth we don't talk about enough. We've been taught to survive, to hustle harder, to carry more, to prove we belong in rooms that weren't built for us. And somewhere along the way, we confused survival with success. We mistook exhaustion for excellence. We wore our burnout like a badge of honor and we called it strength. But Justus Harris is here to tell us something radical. No more repeated cycles. It's time for growth. Let me say that again for the women in the back who are still holding their breath. No more repeated cycles. It's time for growth. Now, I know some of you are thinking, LeAnne, I'm tired. I've been grinding for years. I don't even know what growth looks like anymore. I hear you. And that's exactly why we're here. Because growth doesn't mean doing more, growth means doing different. It means recognizing the patterns that keep you stuck, the roles that drain you, the cycles that repeat because you haven't given yourself permission to break them. And Justus Harris, they've broken every cycle in the book. Let's talk about what that actually looks like because this isn't theory. This is real life, real money, real transformation. And it starts with one decision to stop repeating what's familiar and start building what's possible. The first thing Justus Harris taught me in our conversation is this: you have to break the cycle with bold first moves. Stop repeating familiar patterns by leveraging early opportunities like scholarships and internships to master business basics. No more staying small. Now, I want you to think about that for a second. How many of us have been given an opportunity, a scholarship, a door cracked open just a little, and we tiptoed through it like we didn't belong? We whispered our ideas. We played it safe. We stayed small because we didn't want to take up too much space. But here's what happens when you decide to walk through that door like you own the place. Here's what happens when you understand that early opportunities aren't charity, they're leverage. They're the foundation you build an empire on. Let me tell you about someone who understood this deeply. Chris Justice was born into a middle income family. No silver spoon, no safety net, just scholarships and internships that taught them the business basics. And they didn't waste a single lesson. They studied the gaps in enterprise data analytics during the early 2000s and 10s, saw what nobody else was seeing, and launched Nexa Flow Systems, a predictive analytics company that Fortune 500 companies couldn't live without. They started as an analyst, spotting operational gaps before artificial intelligence became the buzzword it is today. They built a company that solved real problems for real businesses. And when the time was right, they exited for $1.2 billion. Dollars. Let me say that again. $1.2 billion. Dollars. That's not luck. That's not privilege. That's what happens when you stop repeating the cycle of staying small and start making bold first moves. That's what happens when you leverage early opportunities like your life depends on it, because it does. And sis, I know some of you are thinking, but LeAnne, I don't have a tech company. I don't have $1 billion idea. And you know what? You don't need one. What you need is the audacity to recognize the opportunities in front of you, the ones you've been too tired or too scared to take, and leverage them like they're the keys to your future, because they are. This is your soft girl era. This is where you stop apologizing for taking up space and start building the life you've been dreaming about while everyone else was sleeping. This is where you stop whispering your ideas and start declaring them. This is where you stop tiptoeing and start walking in like you belong, because you do. Now, let's talk about the second lesson Justus Harris dropped in our conversation: scale through strategic pivots. Build wealth by exiting smart, like unicorn sales, and diversifying into real estate, tech, and energy. Turn vision into $1.4 billion empires without chasing trends. Here's where it gets juicy, because Chris Justice didn't stop at the $1 billion exit. They could have. They could have retired, bought an island, posted sunset pictures on social media, and called it a day. But that's not growth. That's comfort. And comfort is just another cycle. Instead, they pivoted. They took that exit money and diversified into real estate, energy tech, and private equity. They built Green Grid Ventures, which delivered 300% returns. They invested in Urban Horizon Properties, which now make up 60% of their assets and yield 8 to 12% annual appreciation. They didn't chase trends, they built systems. They created wealth that doesn't depend on one market, one industry, or one lucky break. And let me tell you why this matters for us. Because how many of us have put all our eggs in one basket? One job, one income stream, one version of success that we've been chasing for years, even though it's draining us dry. How many of us have been running the same race, hoping for different results, but never changing the route? Let me tell you about Robert F. Smith. He left Goldman Sachs, saw the repeated underperformance in enterprise software, and founded Vista Equity Partners with $1 million. $1 million. Today, that firm manages over $100 billion in assets and delivers 25% annual returns. He didn't follow the script, he rewrote it. He saw the cycle of underperformance and said, I'm not participating in that anymore. And he built something that changed the game. He didn't stop there. He paid off $34 million in student debt for an entire Morehouse graduating class. He turned his pivot into purpose. He turned his wealth into legacy. He broke the cycle of exclusion and created pathways for thousands of young Black students to build their own empires without the weight of debt holding them back. And then there's Kenneth Frazier. He took Merck from patent cliffs and declining revenue to a $60 billion biotech powerhouse by pivoting to immuno-oncology. He invested $10 billion in research and development, launched Keytruda, which became the world's top drug at $25 billion a year in sales, and tripled Merck's stock price in the process. He rose from being a legal aid in segregated Philadelphia to becoming the general counsel of Merck and then the chief executive officer amid crises. He didn't play defense. He chose growth. He chose innovation. He chose to break the cycle of decline and build something that would save lives and create wealth simultaneously. These aren't fairy tales, these are blueprints. And the blueprint says this: if you want to grow, you have to pivot. You have to diversify. You have to stop doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results. This is where your soft girl era gets real. Because pivoting isn't about abandoning who you are, it's about releasing the roles, the masks, the responsibilities you've been carrying that were never yours to begin with. It's about redefining strength, not as how much you can carry, but as how wisely you can choose what to put down. And that brings me to the third lesson Justus Harris shared: sustain growth with purpose. Recycle profits into stable assets and philanthropy, like STEM education. Growth isn't just money, it's legacy that uplifts communities and endures volatility. Now, this is where the conversation gets sacred, because what's the point of breaking cycles and building wealth if it all disappears the moment the market crashes or the next crisis hits? What's the point if you're still exhausted, still empty, still running on fumes? Chris Justice understood this. They didn't just build wealth, they built legacy. They recycled profits into stable real estate assets that generate consistent income. They launched the Justice Impact Initiative, investing in STEM education for underserved communities. They created something that outlasts them, something that uplifts others, something that turns survival into something sacred. Robert F. Smith understood this. Kenneth Frazier understood this. They didn't just build empires, they built ecosystems. They created opportunities for others to thrive. They turned their pain into purpose, their survival into something that supports the next generation. Because here's what I need you to hear: growth without purpose is just another hustle, it's just another cycle. And we didn't come this far to repeat the same patterns with a bigger bank account. Your soft girl era is about more than rest. It's about reclaiming your identity, not the version shaped by family expectations, church roles, or boardroom rules, but the real you that's been waiting to bloom. It's about protecting your peace as a practice, creating space for joy, rest, and boundaries without apology. It's about turning your pain into purpose, your survival into something that supports others. So here's what I need you to do right now, today, not tomorrow, not when you feel ready, now. Audit your cycles. Pick one repeated pattern. Maybe it's the job that's been draining you for years. Maybe it's the fear of risk that keeps you playing small. Maybe it's the cape you've been wearing, the superwoman script you've been following, the belief that rest is weakness and softness is surrender. Map a bold pivot. What's one move you can make this week that breaks the pattern? What's one opportunity you've been ignoring because you didn't think you were ready? What's one investment, one boundary, one decision that could change everything? And then execute. No excuses. No waiting for permission. No more staying small, because Justus Harris proved it's possible. Chris Justice proved it. Robert F. Smith proved it. Kenneth Frazier proved it. And now it's your turn. This is your soft girl era. This is where you stop surviving and start thriving. This is where you drop the cape, embrace the softness, and build the life you've been dreaming about. This is where you say no to the cycles that kept you stuck, and yes to the growth that sets you free. I want you to imagine something with me for a moment. Imagine waking up 1 year from today and realizing that the cycle you broke this week became the foundation of an empire you built. Imagine looking back and seeing that the pivot you made, the boundary you set, the risk you took changed everything. Not just for you, but for your children, your community, your legacy. Imagine being the ancestor your descendants thank. Imagine being the example that inspires someone else to break their cycle. Imagine building wealth that doesn't just survive market crashes, but thrives through them. Imagine creating something so purposeful, so intentional, so rooted in legacy that it outlives you and continues to uplift others long after you're gone. That's what's possible when you stop running in circles and start building empires. So here's my challenge to you. I want you to take out your phone right now. Open your notes app. Write down one cycle you're breaking today, one pivot you're making this week, one bold move you're executing this month. And I want you to commit to it. Not just think about it, not just dream about it, commit to it. Because the world doesn't need another version of you playing small. The world needs the empire you build when you stop running in circles. The world needs the wealth you create when you pivot with purpose. The world needs the legacy you leave when you sustain growth with intention. No more repeated cycles. It's time for growth. Insist you're ready. You've always been ready. Now go build your empire.